been experiencing exponential growth in recent years, but he continues to strive to become the leader in innovation in student learning methods. Here to talk about raising successful children, please welcome Xosa.
Thank you. Thanks very much for inviting me over here. So, she eloquently introduced my background, so I guess all I have to talk about here is I'll be very happy to share with you my observations when it comes to students that we see at Georgetown University specifically, especially students that are getting to top law school programs. And we've been on campus for about 5-6 years. At Georgetown University, we teach the entire pre-law program in terms of the LSAT preparation. So if you want to go to law school, that's definitely our thing. What I want to share with you, actually, since our topic today is really just about parenting, and it's about the kind of kids that we see. You know, as you can probably tell, I'm fairly young in terms of the parenting. But what I can share with you is the things that I see when I teach my students. Like over the years, we've taught over 1,500 students who are aiming to go to law school. So at this stage, I wanted to share with you the implications of their earlier childhood and the kind of education that they receive. And because we do pre-law advising as well, so in that process, we actually see a lot of people telling us about what are the things that really made an impact on them. So in order to do a really good personal statement, we actually talk to every student individually, talk to them about how they were brought up, and in that process, they tell us exactly the kind of life experience they've had, more particularly the kind of impact that their parenting style has produced on them. So since we're here, let's talk about those. First thing I want to talk about is this. I've noticed that there's quite a bit of difference in terms of the parenting style, in terms of independence. There is a marked difference in terms of how children perceive their independence in and outside of the family. I've noticed that for Asian American students, you know, because when we grow up, we were essentially constantly being supervised by parents most of the time, right? And when we talk about independence, we are talking about independence from the angle of the family. So if when I was young, when I do something, my parents would be next to me, and my mom would be assigned a job to do my homework with me and supervise me and chauffeur me around to different places. In that process, when I say independence, I'm actually thinking in terms of the independence from the angle of me and my mom. That actually provides a very, very useful structure. According to a 2014 Stanford University study, when Asian kids talk about doing something, and if you were to ask Asian kids in general, hey, what are the some things that you like to do, they usually say things that then they and their parents would like to do together. However, this is absolutely not the case when it comes to their white counterparts. If you were talking about a white student, for example, that are traditionally raised in American culture, usually when they talk about independence, they're talking about that from the angle of themselves. So when you ask them, what is something you like to do, and or can you please give me a description of your mother, the way in which these students describe their parents tend to be like, they like to do that, their hobbies are like this, but my hobby is different. You see, so the impact of that is actually this. Usually when I teach students, college students that want to go to law school at Georgetown, I've noticed that so many students, especially the Caucasian students, so many of them actually have outside jobs. They always tell me their time constraints. They're saying, Tom, you know, we can get the homework done, but we have to work like 35 hours in addition to school. I said, 35 hours? Aren't you from, Greenwich, Connecticut? And then there's, yeah, that's true, but that has nothing to do with me. I have to earn my way, and this has always been the way ever since I was growing up. So when they perceive independence, they perceive independence from the complete independent self. On the other hand, when I've noticed that the way in which people think and approach questions is completely different when we have an Asian student most of the times. That is to say, when I say, oh, you need to get this done, they're saying, okay, I'll guess I'll get that done, that's completely fine, but my mom and my dad will be doing this and that. And when they think about resources, that's also completely as a unit. They say, well, I will have my dad contact you about this problem, that problem. My mom would like to talk to you about this and that. So the level of supervision is extremely close generally for Asian students, right? You guys are certainly familiar with the concept of Tiger Mom, the book that was published by the Yale professor, the battle of Tiger Mom. So I want to point something out in this process. I was very interested in the impact of this type of education because I came from a family like that. When I was applying to college, there were many schools out there, and when I was rejected by Harvard, I told my mom I was rejected by Harvard, and then my mom said, "What is the acceptance rate this year?" I said, "Oh, it's about 5%. She goes, "So you're telling me from among 100 people, they picked 5 people, you're not even one of those?" So I said, yeah, that's right. So I ended up going to the University of Chicago, obviously not regretting that, but nevertheless, that is the general reaction coming from my family, specifically, right? And my mom is a PhD in economics, and she was the only student picked when she was, when we were in China, she was the only student picked to go to college for her generation, for her class. So to her, she always likes to say that when she was getting trained in Japan for business management, her instructor had gifted her, when she was leaving, had gifted her one line, which is, us Japanese like to say that if there is a number one in the world, it's me. So, and then the instructor said, I will not give this to you, because I feel like you look like a lady that's going to be able to achieve something in life. And now she's been trying to give that to me for years and years and years. So that's essentially the process. I totally understand what it's like to be growing up in a family like that. Another thing I'd like to share with you is there's a very interesting effect that I've noticed when it comes to Asian students. This happened both when I was going to college, actually, and also later when I'm teaching pre-law students at Georgetown. So when I was going to college, there were many occasions I've noticed that when we have our buddies and we're playing some basketball, and one day one of my best buddies, his name is David, he just sat there and didn't want to say a thing after the game for like 30 minutes. So I went up to him and said, what happened, Dave? He said, I'm done. I said, what do you mean you're done? I mean, we just played basketball game, of course you're done. He said, no, I'm done. So I didn't quite understand what he meant. And later I said, Dave, did you just break up with a girl or something? What do you mean done? He said, ever since I've been little, I've been chauffeured around to go to different tutoring sessions. I had to play the piano, I had to play the clarinet, I had to recite this many, I had to go to Chinese school, of all these things. And then I went to the best magnet school in my region, and then I applied to Berkeley and got into all these great schools. And I specifically chose U Chicago because I want to get away from my parents. At that point, I'm thinking there's nothing new. Of course, everybody understands that, because why do you think I chose U Chicago instead of New Jersey, where I was from? And so we got there, he goes, and then I had to score absolutely the very best on the SATs. I scored complete full score on the SATs, got myself over here, and I just can't continue anymore. I don't want to study anymore. Now that they're not here, I'm so much happier. For the very first time, I am happy. I get to play sports, I get to do whatever I want, I just don't have to study. I don't have to follow anybody else's schedule. So he said, in fact, I have this theory. I personally believe that there's a burnout point for people. He goes, it's not just me. When I look at all the buddies that I have coming from California, they're all, think about it, I went to one of the best magnet schools there. Everybody's super achievers. And at some point he said, I just feel like you're going to be done. The question is when. If you happen to be done with burnout at a much later stage in life, good luck. That's pretty good. Maybe you can rest on your laurels with your PhDs, or maybe you get burned out a little bit earlier like me right now. The point of this story actually is this. I think that when you think about educating your kids, right, one thing I think that's very, very important is that we absolutely have to give them enough freedom to fail. This is especially the case when it comes even for their academic pursuit, both in life and later in academic pursuit. Here at Georgetown University, which kind of students tend to cry the most when I teach a class? The ones that come from the very best schools. One time we had a student who graduated from Yale sitting there, right? We were doing questions, everybody, and she just wouldn't look up. From an entire class of 50 people, she just wouldn't look up. So I actually kind of became curious. Her name is Erin. And Erin usually would always look up. She's very eager. She sits on the front row like every good student would, right? And later I approached her. I had everybody doing questions. I went over her, and she just wouldn't look up. And I started to see large teardrops on paper over and over again. And I said, "What happened?" And then she just said, "I have never been so intellectually humiliated ever since I was born." I said, "Erin, you want to go to law school? You're here to learn. You're not going to feel great." She goes, "Yeah, but I have never really struggled this much with the material. I really want to do well. It just doesn't come to me easy as most of the other things are." So I said, "What makes you think that you should get everything easily?" She said, "Because that's the way things have always been. It should be the case." So at which point I said, I thought to myself, your parents didn't let you fail enough. On the other hand, I have many students. Actually, one of the students that really stood out was this guy from Tennessee, attending Georgetown. His name is Patrick. In fact, when you drive by the Georgetown campus, you see white picket fence sometimes. He painted those. So every time after school, he's the one that's holding the paintbrush, painting up everything, and then his employer would tell him, "Do it again, Patrick," and he would do it again. And he would stay there until midnight because his employer told him to paint the fence. His employer never knew he actually went to Georgetown. His employer never knew that he's at Harvard Law today. But Patrick, good luck getting this guy to cry. You can say anything to him, and he's done, "Oh yeah, got it, don't worry about it." He's just that kind of guy. He's failed so much in his life. He had to do so much to get to where he is. It's just a completely different kind of mindset. Think about it. Legal profession, as an attorney, you're being one of the highest pressure tanks out there. Patrick can handle a lot of pressure. But Erin, even if she actually went through the program and she later did attend Columbia Law, I'm not sure down the line, because she was showing signs of breaking point earlier. So I guess I want to advocate for a more holistic approach of our parenting style. If we can have our parents allowing the kids to fail more and fail independently, rather than think about it in terms as a unity. "Oh my God, I failed. It's okay. My mom's going to pick me up. Why? She's going to be there to provide support." And that's great. It's true. But you specifically must fail. You absolutely have to fail as many times as possible, and you have to pick yourself up. That process will make you a completely different kind of person. And I encourage parents to set up some kind of orchestrated failures for their kids. Strategic failing is extremely beneficial for children, in my opinion. This is the case both earlier and later in college, and also later in their profession as well. Through failure, I think that kids would understand life to be in a larger context than just school, than just doing well within the community, within the family. That kid can probably take a lot more than just making it in a profession. That's one aspect that I really want to emphasize. The other thing I think is that failure cultivates creativity. It's really important for creativity to be there. Many times we see extremely high-scoring students, Asian students at Georgetown, as you can imagine. They score very, very high scale. But if you observe their interaction with the school administrators, you'll find something fairly interesting. A lot of times, people are shy. A lot of times, people are somewhat reserved. People are not very good at advocating or selling themselves, marketing themselves, their skills to the people that they're talking to. So sometimes people out there will confuse that to be as a sign of us being aloof, being distant, but it's not true. We just have not interacted with that huge a variety of people enough. So I strongly recommend that if you are into putting high pressure on your children, that's great, but give them plenty of room to fail, and also push them out, let them stand on their own toes sometimes. It really makes a huge difference to their growth. And cut them some slack here and there, because we don't want them to burn out too early. So these are just some things that I see in my educational career here at Georgetown by teaching all the students. I see a lot of college students, and these are the things that we see nowadays. Thanks very much.